To believe that these are the same exact chicks that I did a video of about a month ago. A lot has happened since then, and they are almost ready to be integrated into the main flock. They have about at least 2 more weeks before they completely outgrow this brooder and will be 10 acres that we have here in Chicken Wonderland. It's early spring, so we don't have much green grass yet. But I've never met a chicken that didn't appreciate all this. We have predators, so we can't let them out too early. They also can't be integrated until 6 weeks anyway. So right now they're still just going to be, in the brooder, but it won't be long. A few chicken colds that do not have vaccines that you can vaccinate for. These colds I found are most common when you do not buy from something like a reputable breeder or hatchery and instead go to something like a store that is selling them, and you don't really know where they're coming from. Stores, retail stores, they tend to need to get every single penny out of what they're doing. So, they're going to go for the cheapest that they can find, and then they're going to sell it to you at normal price. That's how they make their money. And unfortunately, most of those retail businesses just, don't really care that much about, getting them from the best place. So the good news is that if your chick is strong and healthy to begin with, these little chicken colds are most definitely not a death sentence. They'll have the cold for, 2 or 3 weeks, and then they'll recover. Unfortunately, most of these respiratory colds in birds, especially poultry, have a sort of long-term side effect sometimes of asthma. Not every chicken develops it, but if they do develop it, you're going to have to make sure that you keep your coop, at a right temperature that's not too hot for them and doesn't have too much dust. If you ever see one coughing like it has asthma, you may want to treat it. There are a few different methods to treat for that, but I find that one of the easiest ways is either to put peppermint, just regular old peppermint leaves, in the nest box or somewhere where they go a lot, or peppermint oil that has been keyword diluted peppermint oil, on their shoulders or in between their shoulders, somewhere that they can't rub their eyes on. So that sort of just aromatically helps open up their airways. It's not really common for them to actually get an asthma attack like that, but if that happens, it works pretty well. Unfortunately, a long time ago, I brought one of these chicken colds to the farm by being naive and getting one of those chickens from where I had no idea where they came from at one of those retail stores. And unfortunately, once you have it on your farm, it's nearly impossible to get rid of, at least the strain that I have on the farm. First of all, the adults are carriers. So if you plan on keeping your adult flock and not culling them, eventually the babies, no matter how much cleaning you do, when you introduce them into the flock, they'll get exposed. Again, if you have a healthy chick, it's probably going to survive. But, any little thing, especially as a day old, that would compromise the immune system is enough to be a death sentence, on top of that cold. So if they come with coccidia, if they come with other parasites and you don't treat for that, if they come shipped through the mail as day olds, that's a lot of stress, and that really affects the immune system. Or if they came like these 4 leg bars here that are huddled together, that one actually was born from our own hens and roosters, but these 4 leg bars were not. they came as eggs. Even stress on eggs can have an immune effect, a negative effect on the immune system. They were shipped 2 weeks, had been chilled because of the weather, 2 weeks on the dot, pretty much, but maybe plus a few days even. They should not have even still been fertile, and somehow they all hatched. When they go through that much stress, if they do hatch, they are just going to be weaker most of the time. And so this chick had a very fortunate gift from its mother and father, which was natural antibodies against this little cold. And it also had the privilege of not having to worry about the egg being shipped in the mail and just being taken very gently from the coop to the incubator. So that chick was sick for 2-3 days, which is remarkable even for a very strong chick. Usually a very strong chick takes at least a week or a week and a half to get over this. But because this chick already had antibodies absorbed from the yolk when it was born, it only was sick for a couple days. However, this chick, sadly, is a carrier and gave it to these chicks. So I started noticing that they were sick, really sick, not deathly ill, but you could just tell that they were not faring as well as the one that was born here. And they were sicker than they should be for a strong chicken. So at that point I thought, okay, something about being shipped in the mail did something to their immune system. I need to kind of intervene here. At that point, you know that they're weaker than normal. You definitely need to do something. So the very first time I had this issue with a weak chick being introduced to this cold, I actually didn't have all the resources I have now. I had less, a lot less. The first time I just started thinking in my head, well, chicks get antibodies from the mother, right? It's from that yolk that they have the antibodies. What if I feed an egg to these chicks? It's kind of the same concept. They're not absorbing it from inside the egg, but you would be feeding them a yolk that still has the same antibodies. So I put it in a little tiny, very shallow, this is actually their last dose of it. And see how shallow that is? I cut it like this, not because they need it this shallow now, but they would have when they were little baby chicks. You whisk it up, and instead of leaving it whole, and maybe put just a little few spoonfuls of water in there to mix in with it. For whatever reason, if it looks like something that they want to drink instead of eat, for whatever reason at this age, they're more attracted to that than if it's a huge chunk of food. No matter what piece of food it is, no matter what it's made of, if it's big enough, I don't know why, but they just don't see it as food when they're day olds. Now, some very voracious chickens might not care, but these scaredy cat leg bars that are scared of everything didn't want to touch anything that was new, and so even with me mixing it up, it took a while for them to try it out and taste it. But most chicks, if it looks like water, they're going to go right for it. So that's why I say mixed up, and maybe pour a little, not much, maybe 4 to 5 parts egg, 1 part water, something like that. And you want to make sure that it's all gone within 1 to 2 hours, roughly. You want to make sure that anything that's spilled gets cleaned up, because if it's not cleaned up, that could create other problems. That could create bacteria growing in the brooder, and we don't want that. So you have to make sure that since it's a raw egg, since you can't cook it, you're trying to get the antibodies from it, so you can't cook it like you normally would. You're going to have to be thinking outside of the box and have an imagination with things if you want your chicks to survive. Now, if you don't care about your chicks and you would rather just leave nature to take its course, which a lot of bigger farms will do, you know, then that's your own choice. But I personally think that it doesn't even matter whether it's a really expensive chicken or a meat bird chicken. I don't really care what kind of chicken it is. It's a life. It's not an inanimate object. And even if you're raising them for meat, I believe that they should have the best life that you can possibly give them, you know, with dignity. So anything I can do to help them be as strong as they can and to help them get better, I'm going to do. So the first time I tried this, like I said, I did not have the resources I have now. That was the only thing at my disposal that I had. They were chicks, Dales, that were shipped in the mail, and just were going through too much stress to battle this cold on their own. Before I thought of that idea, they would be sick for 2-3 weeks. I would lose up to 35% of my entire batch of day-olds. And when I started doing the antibodies from the hens that had already recovered from that cold, I did not lose any more chicks. The only chicks that I had ever lost since then were chicks that weren't going to make it anyway, that were just too far gone. You know, sometimes you get one in the mail that you can just tell it's not even getting up. It's not going to make it. Sadly, every once in a while you get some like that. But any of the ones that were strong enough to eat, that worked. So for this time, I had the luxury of not just that, but some immunity boost supplements. It's an herbal supplement. It's all natural and it's safe for chickens. You want to make sure that if you find any of these, sometimes they're hard to find, but if you can find them, you want to make sure that it's safe for poultry, because not everything that you can take or your dog can take, your cat can take, not everything, you know, is okay for chickens, and you most definitely want to look up how much to give them and all that. So I actually had two things going for them this time. Like I said, any bit helps. Did I really need to put that supplement in there? Probably not. I probably only just needed that egg. And by the way, you're going to want to, in most cases, you're going to want to give them probably 2 to 3 doses of those antibodies. So what I usually do is I whisk up one raw egg, put it in the thing. If they don't eat it all, do not put the same egg back in the next day, because it has to be fresh and clean. Give them a totally new egg. I'll usually spread it out over the course of 2 to 3 weeks. So I'll give them 2 to 3 doses in 2 to 3 weeks. And if that seems to be working and there's no more symptoms, then I will stop at that point. If they still seem like they're struggling with the cold, then I may continue for a little bit longer. So I say, roughly once a week until they start looking like they're feeling better.